it's a good ol' whodunit, who is it, or where the hell are they, unsolved mysteries can drive you nuts. Good thing these ones got cleared up, even if it did take a decade to do it. First up on our list today, we have the mystery of the Golden State Killer. The man behind it all, who has also been referred to as the original Night Stalker, took the lives of at least 13 individuals and violated countless others between the years of 1974 and 1986. He was finally caught on April of 2018 after hiding in plain sight for over 40 years. During his years of crime, the Golden State Killer had been known to stalk women for days, if not weeks, during which time he would often break into their homes and leave behind twine, which he would later use to tie up his victims. At first, he targeted single women, but eventually he moved on to targeting couples. While the killing spree came to an end in 1986, the investigation most certainly did not. In April of 2018, authorities used their advancements in DNA pairing technology to link one Joseph James D'Angelo, a former law enforcement officer, to the killings of a couple located in Rancho Cordova, and from there, the floodgates opened. D'Angelo pled guilty to ending 13 lives and committing more than 50 violating acts on unsuspecting women in order to avoid the death penalty. He was instead sentenced to 12 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus another 8 years because screw that guy. Next on our list today, we have the mystery of the Bear Brook killings, which took place in 1978 but weren't discovered until 1985 and 2000. In 1985, a hunter making his way through the park came across a large industrial steel drum. Inside, he found 2 female bodies that had been dismembered and stuffed inside of plastic bags. Forensics at the time had determined that the 2 women had died sometime between 1977 and 1985, but the exact date was unknown. Later, in the year 2000, a second 55-gallon drum was found in the same area. When it was opened, another 2 bodies were found inside in the same condition as the first 2, and with the same estimated time of death. It wasn't until 2017 that police found their man, though, after using genetic technology to track DNA found at the crime scene back to Terry Rasmussen, an inmate at California's High Desert State Prison who had died 7 years prior while serving time for killing his former girlfriend. It was revealed that Terry had committed many crimes, including burglary and abduction, while using different names throughout the years. Eventually, using this information, 3 out of 4 bodies found in the still drums were able to be identified. However, the 4th identity to this day remains unknown. Speaking of identities, next on the list we have the mystery of Lori Ruff's true identity. In 2004, a man named Blake Ruff fell in love with a woman named Lori, and the 2 were married. During the marriage, Blake found Lori to be pretty skittish when it came to speaking about her past, but he never really thought much of it. That was until Lori took her life in the year 2010, and Blake and his family discovered a mysterious box mixed up in her belongings, which revealed that Lori was actually not Lori. Blake's late wife had in fact stolen the identity of a deceased woman 22 years ago in the year 1988. When the story broke to the news, many people were fascinated by it and intrigued to find out the true identity of Lori Ruff. Colleen Fitzpatrick was the one to solve the case by using genetic DNA testing, which led her to the Cassidy family, who had had a daughter who had run away from the home in 1986 after learning about her parents' divorce. When police officers presented the mother with a picture of Lori, she cried out, "My God, that's Kimberly." The DNA match confirmed that Blake Ruff's wife Lori was in fact Kimberly McLean, and in a bittersweet unfolding of events, the mystery was solved. Next up, we have the mysterious disappearance of an entire Persian army, which in 524 BC completely vanished while making their way through the Egyptian Sahara. It was as if they'd been swallowed by the sands of the desert, which for a long time was the main theory. A sandstorm had swept across the lands and buried 50,000 men. No survivors, no trace. It wasn't until 2009 when this theory was disproved after a team of Italian archaeologists stumbled across a massive amount of bronze artifacts and a lot of piles of bones, which appeared to be belonging to the lost army. Upon further investigation, it was noted that the group of soldiers had been found near a ruined fortress, and in 2014, Olaf Kapur came forward to share his thoughts. It was clear to him that the army had been mercilessly killed after being ambushed by rebel forces in the unfamiliar terrain. Next up, we've got Janet Love, a 36-year-old cold case case that took place in 1982 and wasn't solved until the year 2020, after significant advancements in DNA testing were able to shed some light on the incident. When Janet was found dead in her Bedford, Texas apartment, police noticed two things. One, that she had been hit in the head with a projectile fired from a handheld weapon, and that is what caused her death. And two, that she had also been taken advantage of and violated directly prior to her passing. The police collected fluid DNA from the crime scene but were unable to do anything with it at the time due to a lack of DNA processing abilities. In fact, it wasn't until 2021 that Janet Love's case was cracked by using the DNA sample of the assailant collected from the crime scene. Officials were able to link the killing to Janet's neighbor, Ray Chapa, who had been just 19 at the time the crime was committed. Unfortunately, Ray was never prosecuted as he passed just 9 months before being identified as the assailant. Next up, we have the Grim Sleeper, who began killing in 1985 but went on a hiatus between the years 1988 and 2002 before picking up again and continuing his spree until the year 2007. During the time in which the Grim Sleeper was active in his life of crime, he had claimed the lives of at least 10 women, but it is estimated that the number is much closer to 25. The MO of the killer, who was later identified as Lonnie David Franklin Jr., would solicit sex workers, violate them, capture their image on a Polaroid camera, and then end their life by firing a projectile into the woman's chests. Lonnie's identity as the Grim Sleeper was revealed after his son Christopher had been arrested for carrying an illegal weapon. When Christopher's DNA was run through law enforcement databases, it was revealed that his sample bore an incredibly close resemblance to DNA found on the victims of the Grim Sleeper. The police began investigating Christopher's relatives and eventually found a match after swabbing a cup used by Lonnie at a restaurant near his house. He was arrested on July 7th of 2010 and after a 3-month trial was sentenced to death in the city of Los Angeles. However, he was found dead in his cell on March 28th of 2020, the cause of which was never revealed to the public. Next on our list, we have the strange death of Joette Smith, who on March 29th of 1983 was found dead floating in the San Lorenzo River. She had been last seen on March 27th of the same year, leaving a local bar. When she was found, her body was bruised and cut, and it was clear that the cause of death had been due to foul play. When police began questioning people around town and those close to Joette, it came to light that in the days leading up to Joette's disappearance, a local man named Eric Drummond had asked her out on a date, but she declined. He became the lead suspect in the case, but due to lack of evidence and DNA testing at the time, Eric was never arrested. It wasn't until 2022, 39 years after Joette's death, that DNA evidence saved from the scene was able to identify Eric as the perpetrator of the crime. However, before Drummond was arrested, he took his own life and was therefore never prosecuted for his crimes. Next, we have the case of Lindy Biechler, a woman who was killed in 1975, but whose killer's identity wasn't revealed until 45 years later in 2020. On December 5th of 1975, Lindy, a flower shop clerk who had been married just 1 year prior to the incident, was found dead inside the living room of her home in Lancaster. She had been pierced with a sharp blade 19 times, and evidence at the crime scene suggested that the crime had been motivated by the assailant's desire to engage in intimate relationships with Lindy. In 2019, prosecutors released an artist's sketch of a man they claimed to have left DNA evidence at the crime scene. In 2020, a genetic analysis of the DNA pointed law enforcement in the direction of David Sinopoli, a man who had been living in Lindy's building at the time of her death. They were able to lift a DNA sample from a coffee cup Sinopoli had thrown away before hopping on a flight at Philadelphia International Airport. He was arrested in 2023 and pled guilty to killing Lindy, putting an end to England's longest standing cold case to date. Starting off our top 2 today, we have Samuel Little, also known as America's most prolific serial killer, who started his spree in the year 1970 and didn't stop until 2005, meaning he had plenty of chances to get caught, but he just wasn't. Until 2014, that is. Throughout his spree, Little claimed the lives of at least 50 victims. I say at least because in 2018, Little finally confessed to his crimes, documenting how he took the lives of all 98 of his victims in extreme detail. And since then, authorities have been able to confirm at least 50 of the victims named in these confessions. This puts Little far ahead of killers like Wayne Gacy, who had 36 kills, and Ted Bundy, who had 33. Little's MO was to target people he believed would never never be accounted for, mainly sex workers and substance addicts. For 35 years he got away with it, and then remained unsuspected for another 9 after he stopped killing. But eventually he was arrested when DNA evidence linked him to a number of the crime scenes. Little was sentenced to life in prison without parole, but later died in his cell. As of 2023, victims of Little were still being identified. And finally, to finish off our list today, we have a Missouri man known as the Package Killer, who between March of 1990 and February of 1991 had spent his time killing a total of 6 young women. It wasn't until 2022 that a man named Gary Muehlberg was linked to the crimes after the former cold case had been examined using new advancements in DNA technology. Gary's MO was to track down sex workers, lure them back to his home, and forcibly block their airways. He would then abandon them on the side of highways and roadways, sealed in wooden boxes, placed in garbage cans, and even stuffed between 2 mattresses. By the time Gary was caught for these crimes, he was actually already in jail, serving a life sentence for another killing, unrelated to the killings that took place in 1990 and 1991. Gary, who seemed shocked to have been caught for his earlier crimes after all of this time, and after he was already facing a life sentence, confessed and was charged with the killing of 4 more women. Alright you guys, that's all for today. I really hope you enjoyed our video and that you learned some stuff. Don't forget to share your thoughts on the video in the comment section. I will be taking a look throughout the week. As always, I have been your host, Hannah Thompson, and I will see you in our next video.